Hi everyone, welcome to Woolen Spinning. This is episode 37 and it is Friday, September 16th. I hope you are all doing well and that you are enjoying the fall weather wherever you are. It's been beautiful here. I have a lot to share with you today, and thankfully we actually don't have any housekeeping for today's show. So I did want to say a very warm welcome to the new Patreon subscribers. Welcome to the community, and to those who are wanting to join the conversation and interested in sort of more that's happening, please come over to the Ravelry group, which is Woolen Spinning, and join in. We have a spin along that is happening right now in the Ravelry group, and it is going till the end of the year, and I will chat about it a little bit later in the show. I hope that you're able to participate. It is open to everybody. And yeah, I hope that we see you over there, and I'll like I said, I'll give you some more information later in the show. So I'm going to jump right in because we've had a lot going on here, and there hasn't really been a great opportunity for me to kind of stop and pause and sort of look at what I'm working on and have a chance to sort of dissect it a little bit. So I'm excited to do that this evening. I may not get to everything that I want to chat about, and if not, you will hear about it next show. So don't worry. This shawl is one of the things that I'm hoping to talk about, and if I don't get to it, I will talk about it next week, but there are some other things that I wanted to share, so bear with me. As you can see, I am in yet another location. One of the things that has been going on here is we have company coming, not this week, but next week, and they are actually my husband's family. They're coming for 2 weeks, and while we're really excited for them to come, we haven't seen them since Christmas time. We started to pull the office apart to create a bedroom space for them so that they could stay with us, and we have unearthed a fly's nest. So we were going to rip out the carpet anyways as a result of them coming. It forced us to clear everything out and get everything sort of organized for them coming, and now we have some flies in our house. Some is being a bit conservative, so we will still carry on and rip out the floor when they leave, but we've sort of been dealing with cleaning up the house and getting it all in order, and then now we've got some flies. And Charlotte, who's my dog, she's our eldest dog, she's just turned 10, and she's 10 and a half, she's almost 11. She's very severely dysplastic and has quite severe arthritis in her rear hips. So unfortunately, all of a sudden, she's stopped being able to walk. So that's been out of the blue. It's not anything that's caught in her paw. It's nothing to do with her elbows. It's something that's going on up in her hip joint. So I'm actually taking her in to the vet. So hopefully me and Anna can figure out what's going on, because she looks like she's in a lot of pain, even though she's on daily pain medication already. So I've bumped up her dose just a tiny bit, and we're just monitoring her really closely. So there's that going on, and I'm also back in Vancouver and teaching for Sweet Georgia Yarns and doing our fall semester spinning classes. So if you're one of the people that is in the class, I hope you're enjoying it so far. So there's a lot going on. I hope that wherever you are, that things are going well for you. I have a brand new project that I just cast on, and it's actually because I just was dying to get something onto the needles, and I'll tell you why in a minute. I have another handspun knitting project that's kind of on the back burner for a couple of weeks, and I'll explain about that in a minute. I have a finished spin, and I also have some dyeing, which is a little bit, I haven't had some dyeing for like a long time, so I thought that was kind of fun, and I'll chat about that. And if I get to it, I'll chat a little bit about my shawl. So I'll start with my finished spin. I had this on the bobbins last week, and I was just ready to start my second bobbin. This is West Coast Color and Carding, and she doesn't really have colorways, but this was a 2-ply. I was playing with my new Mach 3 that is going to be a demo wheel, and I was just really enjoying playing with the wheel and playing with the different ratios. Parts of this yarn are overspun, parts of this yarn are underspun. Some of it's thick, some of it's thin. It's not particularly consistent, but I love how it turned out. I love the colors. It's very gray. There's some yellow in there and some burgundy, but mostly it's gray. As like an average of the yarn, it came out sort of a bulky, which I was sort of hoping for more of a worsted, but I think from just changing how I was spinning and not being particularly consistent, it came out a little bit thicker. And also this is a Pullover silk and yearling mohair blend, and I'm not exactly sure what the percentages are. I can't actually remember off the top of my head, but basically the mohair makes it a little bit denser and a little bit heavier, and it gives it a little bit of a halo, but the Polworth really bloomed when I washed it. So I was expecting it to bloom a little bit, and it just came out a little bit more so than I had expected. So that is finished. I know exactly what I'm going to do with this. I would like to do a big infinity cowl for myself, and I will keep you posted on that, because actually I'm hoping to start it relatively soon, probably after Spinzilla is over, because I don't actually have an infinity cowl that I can wear with my winter jacket, and my winter jacket is gray with a red plaid lining, so it's kind of perfect. So I'm hoping to have that done for this winter. So that's the first thing that is finished. The other thing that I thought that I would show you was a little update on my lemongrass pullover. So this was my poncho style. It's by Joji Locatelli, this pattern. It's called Lemongrass. I showed it to you last week. It has a cable panel down the center. I was just finishing up the back last week, and it's actually finished and cast off. I did the ribbing. I think I had picked up the ribbing last week. So as you can see, the front and the back are actually two separate panels, and then you have a button band that goes around the whole sweater on the front and the back, with buttonholes that holds the front and the back together under the arm. So these buttons have a little bit of a story, and I won't go into sort of the long diatribe about these buttons, but basically I had them in my button stash. They were in my wooden button box, and I have my buttons divided up by color, and then I have a big box that's just wooden buttons. And I do tend to collect wooden buttons, sort of when we're traveling or when we're away. I do look for wooden buttons to bring home. These buttons I had bought at my local yarn shop, which is here in Langley, British Columbia, which is just outside of Vancouver, British Columbia. And I had bought these years ago for another cardigan that I made called the Truffle cardigan, which at that time was a tutorial on Ravelry. And for anybody who knows about that sweater, that tutorial is no longer available, although I still have the PDF. So if anybody wants it, just send me a message and I'll pass the PDF on to you. And I had bought these buttons for that sweater. And after I finished the sweater, they just didn't work. They didn't look quite the way I had envisioned. I took them off, I stashed them, and I pulled out my wooden buttons when I was trying to find buttons for this. And originally I had envisioned lighter colored buttons, and I have these wooden buttons that are burnished. So they've been burned on top. So they have this dark quality, but in sort of the body of the button is lighter. And I thought that I would use those buttons, but I only had 4. And I actually needed 8 buttons, 4 on this side and 4 on this side. And I kept coming back to these buttons over and over and over again, and I only had 6. So I thought, well, maybe Sue has them still in the shop. And I thought, well, I'll go down there when they're open. This was last weekend, so I had to wait till Tuesday when they opened. And I thought, I'll check and see if she has them. And I walked into the shop, and she's got her buttons right there by the entrance. And she had the same buttons, but in this size smaller. So I thought, that's okay. I can use the smaller buttons up here under the armhole. And then I looked closer, and she had these buttons. She had the right size, and she had 2 left. So it was totally meant to be. So I got my 8 buttons, and I sewed them on. And because the reason why I wanted to get the buttons sewn on before I did the sleeves is because you actually pick up under the arms. You pick up with the front and the back together, and it secures this edge up here under the arm. So I really needed that sort of secured. And also this is all going to be flopping around while I knit the sleeves anyways. So I thought, well, maybe I should secure it all, button it down, and then I'll start the sleeves. And as you know, I need to spin a little bit more yarn for this anyways. I have the bobbins done. I just need to I need to ply it. And I need one more skein of about 200 yards, and then I'm good to go to finish this off. So that might not get done until after Spinzilla, so you may not see this pullover again. I did try it on, At first, my husband was like, ooh, I don't like that at all. But I showed it to my mom, and she actually really liked it, and she really liked the style on me. And once it was buttoned and secured in place, and it kind of cinched it in a little bit more, Mike actually really liked it as well. So that was nice, because I'm planning on wearing this more as like in place of a jacket on a really cool day in November or February when the sun is out, it's not raining, but you need something quite warm. And so I'm hoping that this will be that sweater for me. So that's an update on my lemongrass. And like I said, you might not hear about it for a few weeks. All right, brand new cast on. If you follow me on Instagram, you would have seen this. This is something that I've been planning and plotting and scheming for probably a year. And I just keep putting off casting it on. And because I came to a bit of a standstill with my lemongrass, I thought, well, cast it on. And if I have to put it aside, that's okay. So I decided to cast on Exploration Station by Stephen West. And if you're familiar, sorry for the poor printout. I print on draft when I print patterns. I very rarely print patterns. And when I do, I print them out on draft. The reason why I printed this one is because there are so many different wedges that I wanted to be able to check off the wedges that I had completed. So you basically make a bunch of wedges with short rows and then finish with a border. And you use 4 colors. You use a color that's almost like a lattice that separates all the different wedges. And then 3 other colors that create the body of the wedges. So I had some handspun in my stash that I had been sort of hoarding and not wanting to use in separate projects because I had... I did have enough yardage to do something with each of the individual skeins, but I kept coming back to this idea of using them together in one project. And the reason for that is because they are all braids of fiber from Three Waters Farm. And they're sort of relatively old, like some of her older colorways. They're not new colorways. I spun this stuff over a year ago. And I hope I don't get the names of the colorways mixed up. This one was November Morning. This was Fiber Club from 2014. I don't remember which month. It was sometime in the fall. Might have been February. I don't remember. I spun it as a 3-ply fractal. And it was my first fractal. And I actually talked about it on the show way back when I first started the actual podcast. So maybe check one of the initial episodes and it's there. And I talk about how to prep for a fractal spin. So this is one of the colors. The second color, so this is color B, because color A is your lattice. Color C, so the second contrast color, was Spring Broom's Edge, I think this was called. And this was a traditional 3-ply. It was a blended 3-ply. I split the braid up into 3 sections horizontally, and then I stripped each section quite a bit vertically. Spun to 3 bobbins and then plied. I immediately regretted it after I finished it because I had wished that I had Navajo plied it. But the way it's knitting up, I'm really glad that I didn't, and that I did do the traditional 3-ply, and I'll show that to you in a minute. So that's color number 2. And then the final color was Bottomland, and this is my favorite of the 3. It's very gray. I think you might be seeing a pattern here tonight. Gray, all the things. This has the same greens and the same rusty browns as the other 2 do. So when you put these 3 skeins together, they really work really well together. So what I have done is I went through my stash and I found a lattice color that would work. And so this was BFL from not Superwash, because I folded it and I agitated it when I finished it. These were BFL singles from Sweet Georgia Yarns. I made this yarn probably 2 years ago. It was when it first came out. This colorway was brand new at the time, and it's called Auburn. And I actually have so much of this colorway. I had 8 ounces of it. Oops. That I have about 600 yards of this yarn in total. So I'm going to use whatever I use for this shawl, and then I probably will still have enough left over for my other project that I wanted to make with this yarn. And if not, I'll maybe get some more of the fiber from the studio and spin up what I need to finish the project that I want to knit with it. I wanted to do the Frida shawl with this yarn, which is a Brooklyn tweed pattern from one of the Wool People volumes, and I'd been kind of hoarding it and waiting to cast it on, but it just worked so perfectly with these yarns that I couldn't not use it, and I can always get more. So do you want to see the shawl? I'm really pleased with it. It's a lot of color. I don't normally knit with this much color, but it's turning out beautifully so far. So this is the first 5 wedges. And so far I'm just in the garter stitch. So the first part of the shawl is garter stitch, and then you move into some other pattern stitches, some brioche, and some slip stitches and a whole bunch of other stuff. So that is what it's looking like so far. It's quite bright. Like I said, for me, it's a lot of color, but these are colors I can wear, and they're colors that I really like. And usually I'm wearing one of these colors. I'm usually wearing brown, which I'm wearing tonight, or I'm wearing blue, or I'm wearing white. So these are definitely colors that I can wear in the shawl all together a lot. So I'm really liking this so far. This is about 2 evenings of knitting in between sort of all of my things that I should be doing. I've been using it as sort of my break, my reward knitting, if you will. Let me pick up the fallen skeins, or fallen balls, I guess. All right, the last thing I'm going to talk about tonight, and I think that I'm going to run out of time, and I will talk about this shawl next week, was some dyeing. So I had talked last week about my Kramer Yarns Alpaca Merino Roving. I've been working on this forever. I was trying to clear off my bobbins, and this goes with our fall clear out spin along that's running in the group right now. If you have any projects that have been languishing, bobbins that are kind of half full or maybe completely full and need to be plied, spindles that are kind of semi-full, projects that have sort of been set aside, anything that's sort of been set aside in lieu of other things, this spin along is for you. The idea is that for the rest of the year, we'll sort of work on clearing out our bobbins, clearing out our projects, just kind of getting things cleared out and finished up for starting some new stuff when holiday season comes towards the end of the year and into the new year. So one of the projects that I really wanted to do, and I talked about this last week, was getting my Kramer Yarns merino and alpaca off my bobbins and getting it plied up. And I've been doing it as a 2-ply. I have a HAP, H-A-P, HAP, in mind that I'd like to do by Gudrun Johnston. And I had talked about wanting to over dye this with some logwood, which is a natural dye. And it comes out kind of a purpley color, and that is what I did. So I did scour this. I wasn't going to. I used Orvis paste. I am so glad that I did. You should have seen the water. It was so dirty. And I scoured it. I pre-mordanted it. So I used alum and cream of tartar, and I didn't use cream of tartar like from the kitchen. I used the actual, the more concentrated dyeing cream of tartar. And then I dyed using logwood extract, because you don't have to buy the extract at the store Maiwa that I get my dyes at for natural dyeing. You can actually buy the logwood chips, but I decided to do the extract just for ease with the dogs and the kids and whatnot. So I used the extract and I dyed it at 1% depth of shade based on my weight of fiber. So for those who don't know what I just said, don't worry about it unless you want to get into dyeing. Basically, I did it at the highest depth of shade that I could possibly get. So I used, based on the weight of my fiber, I used as much sort of concentration depth of shade that I could get. I didn't want something sort of light because I was going over gray wool. The original fiber, for those who don't remember or didn't see, looked like this. So this is the original fiber and this is the original gray. And I do have some of the fiber left undyed that I think I'm going to leave undyed. I'd really like to have a natural shades toque that has some color work, and I think that I will use my 3-ply that I made on my spindle when I did the initial review of the fiber for that. And for this 2-ply for the hap, I'll be using this. So I'm really excited to knit with this. It came out beautifully. I did it in my crock pot that I used for dyeing, and it really, really worked out well. One thing that I had struggled with in the past with my crock pot was how long it took to get up to temperature. And of course, once it's up to temperature, it maintains it beautifully. So what I did this time, after I scoured the wool and had gotten the crock pot itself warm, I put another pot of water on the stove, and I actually brought it up to temperature and left it until I was ready to start mordanting, because the yarn itself was already warm and up to temperature. So after I dumped the Orvis paste out and cleaned out the crock pot itself, and after that, then I dumped the water that I had warming on the stove into the crock pot, and it came right up to temperature right away. And then I was able to maintain the temperature, and I just added the yarn back in after I had dissolved the alum in the water. And then I put another pot of water on the stove for the cream of tartar, and then I did the same thing for the actual logwood dye itself. And that actually worked really well, and it kept the temperature really consistent through the entire dyeing process, and it also minimized the amount of time that I was waiting for the crock pot to get up to temperature, because I have quite a big crock pot for dyeing, and so that actually worked really well. So I don't know what other people have found works well for crock pot dyeing. With logwood, you don't want to leave it in the dye pot for more than an hour, because it starts to lose its luster, and it's there's a word that they use in the dye world, and I just can't remember what it is, but basically it just starts to look lackluster. It doesn't sort of have that pop of color anymore. So I actually only did this for about 45 minutes, and they all came out pretty consistent. I did do this one first. It was a test. So it is a little teensy tiny bit darker, but you'd never be able to tell unless you actually were like inspecting it. So that is how that turned out, and I'm really, really happy with that. So I have about 800 yards here, and that'll be more than enough to do a square hap. So yeah, that's my story, and I'm sticking to it. So I hope that you enjoyed this week's episode. It feels like it was really fast this week, but we're almost up to 25 minutes, so that's just awesome. Have a wonderful weekend. I'll be working, so I'll be thinking of all of you at home spinning on your spinning wheels and knitting with your handspun. And until next week, happy spinning. Bye, guys.